Waiting tables is a bit of a marathon of sprints, where every morning starts the same way, but you never know where the day will take you. I work at a small family-run cafe in downtown Lancaster, Pennsylvania. You know, the kind of place where people have been ordering the same coffee for a decade and sometimes tip more than their breakfast cost. There are just four of us. Me, Joan, who has been in the kitchen since the dawn of time. Matt, the new guy who sometimes forgets the order in which the dishes are served, and of course, our boss, Mr. Rogers, whose patience is only measured by his eternal desire to please everyone. Every morning starts the same. I wake up at 6, pull on my uniform, which smells like a mixture of coffee and fried bacon, and head out the door. The walk to the cafe takes exactly 15 minutes, and it's my favorite part of the day. The morning air is cool but crisp, and it feels like the whole city is still asleep. Only rare cars pass by, leaving a short echo behind them. At such moments, I feel like a master of time. I am the first to arrive at work. This is my quiet ritual, to open the doors of the cafe, inhale the smell of yesterday's coffee, wipe the tables, put out the sugar bowls. This is the moment when I am alone with myself, without orders, without clients, without phone calls. Then I go to the kitchen, where I need to turn on the coffee maker and heat the oven. I work quickly. Every movement is developed at the reflex level. Once I was in a hurry, trying to finish everything in a few minutes, but now I know that this process is important. This is my moment of peace before the chaos begins. While I wipe the tables and put away the cutlery, various thoughts are spinning in my head. Usually I think about what would have happened if my life had turned out differently. Maybe I would have moved to a big city, opened my own business, or went to study. But as soon as these thoughts come, I drive them away. It's not that I don't like my job. I just know that there is a world out there, full of possibilities. And sometimes I feel like I am standing still while it moves forward. The first person to come into the cafe, after me, of course, is Mr. Rogers. He is our owner. He is a man of about 60, with a round face and a perpetual good-natured smile. If there was an optimism award, he would win it without a fight. Every morning he says the same thing. "Today is going to be a great day, Jack." I always smile and nod, although what I am really thinking is, "We'll see." This is his morning motto, and I am not going to spoil his mood. Mr. Rogers is the kind of person who knows every customer by name. He does everything to make his customers feel at home. If someone needs something special, he is there. That is why we always have many regular customers. For example, Mrs. Baker, who comes every morning for poached eggs and a cup of tea. Or Mr. Hill, who orders a double espresso and a scrambled egg every Monday. These people have their own habits, which they carefully keep as part of their day. Sometimes it seems to me that the cafe is something like an island of stability for them. But sometimes strangers come into the cafe, and these moments are a real rarity. Usually we can predict who will walk through the door and what they will order. So when one morning an unfamiliar woman appeared in the cafe, it was a surprise for me. I noticed her at once. She walked in slowly, with a slight smile on her lips. Her gaze, confident but calm, slid across the room. She chose a table by the window and sat down, carefully placing her bag next to her. I can't say that she looked unusual, dark hair, simple clothes. But there was something captivating about her. She looked like she came from another world. Slowly, she took a notebook out of her bag and began to write something. Of course, I pretended not to care. I smiled, handed her the menu, offered her coffee. She chose a regular black coffee and a turkey sandwich. Simple. But when I returned to the kitchen, thoughts of her did not leave me. Who was she? Why was she here? And why did she look like she knew something important that we did not? The workday went on, and I tried to concentrate on my work. Customers changed one another, orders came and went, but from time to time I glanced at the stranger. She sat quietly, almost oblivious to her surroundings. The coffee in her cup had already cooled, but she continued to write. Maybe she was a writer? Or a journalist? What was she writing? For what? She left as quietly as she had come. I did not even notice her leaving the cafe until I saw her empty table. On the table was a neat stack of bills left for the coffee and sandwich. She left a little more than necessary, but not so much that it looked strange. I spent the rest of the day thinking. It was an ordinary day, like hundreds of others, but her appearance knocked me out of my usual rhythm. The next morning I found myself looking for her among the customers, but she was not there. The next day gave way to the next, and then the next. She never returned. Sometimes something unusual, barely perceptible, bursts into the usual rhythm of life and changes it in an instant. And while you are trying to understand what it was, the moment has already passed, leaving only a slight echo. A week had passed since the stranger appeared in our cafe. I began to think that her appearance was an accident, some rare glitch in the ordered routine of our establishment. She became something like a fleeting memory, pleasant, but incomprehensible. Life returned to its usual course. Mrs. Baker ordered her poached eggs, Mr. Hill juggled his phone and a cup of coffee, and I was again involved in the endless stream of orders, dishes, and flashing faces. But last Thursday was the day that changed everything. The morning began as usual. I was wiping down tables, turning on the coffee maker, and listening to Mr. Rogers' cheerful monologue about what a wonderful day it was going to be. Somewhere around lunchtime, the mailman popped into the cafe and, waving his hand, handed me a small stack of letters. Most of them were intended for Mr. Rogers, bills, coupons, advertisements. But among all the papers, I noticed an envelope with my name on it. My interest was instantly piqued. I tucked the letter into my pocket, deciding to open it later when I had a free minute. Questions were spinning in my head. Who could have written to me? I wasn't in the habit of receiving letters. Friends usually texted, and the only paper letter I'd received in years was from an insurance company. Work went on as usual, but thoughts about the envelope didn't leave me. I delivered orders, tossed out jokes to regular customers, but all day long I waited internally for the moment to be alone with this letter. When the cafe finally closed, I sat down at a table in the corner, took out the envelope, and opened it. Inside was a piece of paper, folded in half. Neat handwriting filled one side of the paper. It read, "Sometimes life throws us something unexpected, and it's up to us what we do with it. Thanks for the coffee. A." I reread it several times. The letter A instantly reminded me of that stranger. It was from her, I was sure. Dozens of questions flashed in my head. Why did she write to me? What does this note mean? And how did she know my name? At that moment, I realized that somewhere inside me, this woman had left a trace that I had not yet guessed about. The note became something of a puzzle. The next day, I carried it in my pocket like some kind of secret talisman. From time to time, I took it out and reread it, trying to find a hidden meaning in these few lines. The letter A did not give me peace. Are these her initials? Or just a signature? Meaningless? I tried to remember if anyone had said her name that day, but my memory stubbornly refused to cooperate with me. Everything became even more interesting when, a few days later, she appeared again. It was almost in the evening, when the flow of clients began to subside. She walked into the cafe as calmly as she had the first time. This time she looked different, wearing a navy cardigan and a long scarf, but her confidence was the same. She chose the same table by the window again and, as before, pulled out her notebook. I felt my heart beat faster for a moment. Even though I tried to remain calm, my curiosity was boiling inside. I decided that I couldn't just watch her from afar. This time, I served her coffee myself, although Matt, who was free, could have done it. She thanked me with a short nod and a small smile that made everything inside her turn over. But, as before, she barely looked at me. It was like a game where I was trying to figure out the rules, but they were slipping away. All evening, I found myself looking at her more often than I should have. She was writing in her notebook again, pausing to look thoughtfully out the window. It seemed that she was in her own world, where I had no access. I wanted to ask her about the letter, but something inside me stopped every time I came closer. The words seemed to get stuck in my throat. Instead, I did my job, although my thoughts were far away. She left as quietly as the first time. I again found several bills on her table, neatly folded, and no trace of her intentions. No hint that she would return. But I felt that this was not the end. The next morning, I came to the cafe earlier than usual. There was something electric in the air, like before a thunderstorm. I decided that I could not just leave it like that. I could not ignore such a strange coincidence. The letter in my pocket reminded me of her words. Sometimes life confronts us with something unexpected. Maybe this was my chance? But a chance for what? I did not know. That day I was especially attentive. Every time the door of the cafe opened, I expected it to be her. But the day passed and she was still not there. I began to doubt my courage. Maybe she really was a random visitor, and I was wasting my energy on these guesses? In the evening, when I was about to leave, I noticed that someone had left a notebook on one of the tables. Black leather cover, slightly worn around the edges. I picked it up and opened it to the first page. There was a short text. If this is our last chance to cross paths, let it be memorable. Hey, my heart began to beat faster. This notebook belonged to her. I stood in the middle of the cafe, notebook in hand, as if the whole world had suddenly shrunk to this one object. Its leather cover was slightly warm from my palms, and my heart was beating so loudly that I was afraid someone else might hear it. Her words, written on the first page, burned into my consciousness. If this is our last chance to cross paths, let it be a memorable one. Hey, I didn't know what to do. My first impulse was to rush outside and try to catch up with her, but my mind stopped me. She had left the notebook behind on purpose, I was sure. It was not an accidental loss. Her note seemed deliberate, an invitation, even a challenge. But to what end? I slowly turned the page. On the next page, I saw a list of several titles. They were either book titles, or movies, or maybe places. For example, Misty Shore, Cafe in Portland, The Blue Room. A few more lines were crossed out, as if she had changed her mind about leaving them. On another sheet of paper were neat sketches, a cup of coffee, a silhouette of a person in a doorway, a leaf of a tree. They all looked like fragments of her life. I kept flipping through, hoping to find something more. And finally I did. On one of the spreads was a drawing, not a masterpiece, but done with love. It was our cafe. I recognized it by its details. Round tables, checkered tablecloths, a window overlooking the street. At the bottom of the drawing was the caption, "Inspiration always comes from unexpected places." And next to it was a small arrow pointing to the next page. I turned it over. There was an address. No signature, no explanation, just an address on the outskirts of the city. All night I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Should I go there? Maybe this was her address, or maybe it was just another mystery. I knew that if I didn't dare, I would think about it forever. But the risk also seemed enormous. What if I was wrong? Or does she not expect me to do anything at all? Towards the morning, I made a decision. I will go. Even if all this turns out to be empty, at least I will know that I tried. The next day, after my shift, I plucked up my courage and went to the address given to me. It was a small building, almost hidden behind the thicket of trees. It looked like a studio or a workshop, large windows, a wooden door with faded paint. I knocked, not knowing what to expect. The door opened, and I saw her. She was wearing the same dark blue cardigan as last time, but this time her face lit up with a real smile. Her eyes showed confidence that I would come to this meeting. I stood there, at a loss, not knowing how to start a conversation. I still had the notebook. I held it as if it were the key to some treasure. She gestured for me to come in. It was cozy inside. A large table covered with papers, notebooks, and pencils. There were drawings on the walls, the same sketches I had seen in the notebook. This place was her world. She told me that her name was Amelia and that she was an artist and writer. The cafe she had come to was a random stop, but the place and the atmosphere inspired her. She said that she wanted to write a story about those who worked and lived here, and that was why she had left the notebook. She wondered if I would understand her message. I sat and listened and couldn't shake the feeling that all this was like a script for a movie. Did things like this happen in real life? But her voice, calm and confident, brought me back to reality. This was not a movie. This was my life, and I was part of something extraordinary. We talked for several hours. I told her about the cafe, about Mr. Rogers, about the regular customers who had become almost like family. Her eyes sparkled when I described our mornings and the habits of the customers. She listened with such attention that I felt important. As I was about to leave, she stopped me. "This is just the beginning, Jack," she said. "Sometimes a meeting can change not only our day, but our lives. I think we'll see each other again." I didn't know what to say, but her confidence was transmitted to me. The next day at the cafe, everything went on as usual, but something inside me had changed. I no longer looked at my work as just a routine. Amelia said she wanted to come back to spend more time in the cafe, to observe, to write, and maybe to draw. Every day I waited for her, waiting for the opportunity to talk to her again and learn something new about her. She brightened my everyday life. Her notebook remained with me as a reminder that she was interested in me. I felt that this was only the beginning of something bigger,